Tonight, you might order a steak without thinking twice about it. Cow, pig, chicken, fish, whatever's on the menu. But there's one thing you will never see on that menu no matter where you go. Lion, wolf, eagle, tiger. For over 2 million years, our ancestors hunted almost every animal on Earth. But there was one category they almost never touched for food. The animals that hunted them back. So what happened on the rare occasions when they did? Let's start with the part most people get wrong. The reason isn't disgust, and it isn't superstition, it's math. Brutal, unforgiving survival math. If you feed a cow 1,000 calories of grass, only about 100 of those calories become meat on its body. Most of the energy is burned just keeping the animal alive. That is already a massive loss. Now take that beef and feed it to a lion instead of eating it yourself. A predator converts roughly 10% of what it eats into its own body mass. So 1,000 calories of beef becomes 100 calories of lion. Every predator you hunt is a chain of wasted energy, stacked on top of wasted energy that happened before it. For a species that spent most of its history one bad season away from starvation, hunting a carnivore for food wasn't just risky, it was close to mathematically pointless. But energy loss wasn't the only danger hiding inside a predator's body. There was something accumulating that no one could see. Every time an animal eats another animal, it doesn't just gain meat. It inherits everything its prey ever absorbed across its lifetime. Heavy metals, environmental toxins, compounds that don't break down and simply build up in fat and organ tissue. Each step up the food chain, the concentration climbs higher. Scientists call this process biomagnification, and it's the exact reason a tuna today carries far more mercury in its flesh than the small fish it feeds on. An apex predator was never just meat. It was a lifetime of accumulated risk, wrapped in fur and muscle. Then there were the parasites. Predators that hunt sick, weak, or dying prey are far more likely to be carrying something dangerous themselves. Trichinella is the textbook example, a parasitic worm that circulates through carnivorous and omnivorous hosts around the world, passed on every time one animal eats an infected one. Without reliable fire or thorough cooking, eating a carnivore's flesh meant gambling with an infection that could cripple or kill. And even taste worked against predator meat. Carnivores are lean, built for speed and endurance rather than stored fat, which makes their muscle fibers dense and their meat notably tougher. What an animal eats also changes how it tastes. Hunters who have eaten bear meat across different seasons often describe a striking difference. A spring bear that has been feeding on berries tasting far better than a fall bear that has spent months gorging on fish. Interestingly, this rule breaks down completely at sea. Several fish we eat today, like tuna and salmon, are themselves predators, and nobody considers them unappetizing. On land, the energy math never worked in a predator's favor because humans had to hunt or eventually raise them. In the ocean, humans were only ever catching fish opportunistically, so that same inefficiency barely mattered. So predator meat was inefficient, occasionally toxic, sometimes parasitic, and often unpleasant to eat. And yet, our ancestors hunted these animals anyway, just far less often, and not for the reason old textbooks assumed. In 2020, archaeologist Piotr Wojtal examined a collection of 30,000-year-old bones and stone tools uncovered in the Czech Republic. Wolves, bears, lions. For decades, the standard theory was simple. Early humans killed large predators purely for their pelts, never for meat. But Wojtal found cut marks that had nothing to do with skinning at all. Marks used specifically for dividing a carcass into portions for consumption. The meat of these animals had been eaten. The evidence goes back even further. At Grandolina in Spain's Atapuerca Mountains, researchers uncovered the butchered remains of an ancient lion dated to roughly 300,000 years ago, the earliest known example of a large predator being processed and likely consumed by early hominins. At Einhornhöhle in Germany, cave lion paw bones nearly 190,000 years old show Neanderthals were removing and using lion pelts. And at Siegsdorf, also in Germany, researchers found something even more direct. A 48,000-year-old cave lion skeleton with a puncture wound clean through its rib, delivered by a wooden thrusting spear. It stands as the earliest confirmed evidence in human history of a large predator being actively hunted and killed. Not scavenged, not stumbled upon, but hunted. So the old story was incomplete. Ancient humans didn't avoid predators entirely. They ate them, just rarely, and usually only when the risk was worth taking. Sometimes that decision proved fatal. In 1912, Antarctic explorer Douglas Mawson and his companion Xavier Mertz were stranded hundreds of miles from base camp during an ill-fated mapping expedition. Their third teammate, Belgrave Ninnis, had vanished into a crevasse along with the sledge carrying most of their food. With supplies gone, the only thing left to eat was their remaining sled dogs. They ate the meat, they ate the organs, they ate the liver. Within days, Mertz began deteriorating rapidly. Abdominal pain, dizziness, mental confusion, seizures. The skin on his feet began peeling away in sheets. He died before the pair could reach safety. Mawson survived, but barely, losing his own skin and hair before finally stumbling back to camp. In 1969, medical researchers proposed a chilling explanation. Husky liver, like the liver of many Arctic predators, stores extraordinary concentrations of vitamin A. A single gram of polar bear liver can contain well over 100% of a human's daily recommended intake. Eat enough of it, and the body cannot break it down fast enough. The result is hypervitaminosis A, and its symptoms read like a slow, deliberate poisoning. Severe headaches, blurred vision, skin peeling away in sheets, in high enough doses, seizures, organ damage, and death. What makes this story even stranger is that long before Mawson ever set foot in Antarctica, indigenous communities across Siberia, Alaska, and northern Canada already knew this danger by heart. They never ate polar bear liver, and they never ate seal liver either. It was strictly forbidden, a rule passed down through generations with no laboratory, no chemistry, and no understanding of vitamins whatsoever. When European explorers arrived in the region, many dismissed the taboo as primitive superstition. Some of them cooked the liver anyway. A number of them paid for that decision with their lives. Science did not discover this danger. It rediscovered something that had already been known for centuries, encoded not in a textbook, but in a rule nobody was allowed to break. That same pattern hides underneath many of the world's oldest food taboos. Long before anyone could explain the biology behind it, separate cultures across the world independently arrived at the same conclusion. Keep your distance from the hunter's flesh. Ancient Jewish dietary law explicitly forbids the consumption of birds of prey and other predatory animals. The Quran similarly forbids the eating of animals that kill using fangs or talons, a category that eliminates most carnivorous species by definition. These rules look purely religious on the surface, but many researchers believe they were built on something far older, hard survival knowledge that eventually needed a permanent, unbreakable form to keep being followed once the original reasoning was forgotten. And the danger never fully disappeared, it simply changed its name. Today, health authorities still warn pregnant women specifically against eating shark, swordfish, king mackerel, and other large ocean predators for exactly the same underlying reason our ancestors once avoided the predators on land. Mercury. Biomagnification. The same invisible threat that once killed explorers in the Antarctic ice. Quietly measured now in parts per million on a nutrition label. So maybe the real story was never that ancient humans refused to eat predators out of fear or disgust. It's that somewhere deep in the past, one bad hunt, one poisoned liver, one death nobody in the group could explain, became a lesson. That lesson was repeated, generation after generation, tribe after tribe, until it stopped being a memory passed down in words, and quietly became something closer to instinct. Tonight, when you sit down to eat, none of this will cross your mind. You will eat the herbivore without a second thought, and something in you, something older than language itself, will steer you away from the predator without ever telling you why.